Hi there. Today I'm gonna install hatches on the hatch openings so that the hull is water sealed. These hatches, this is for the front and this is for the aft end. And the frames should fit these. On the other hull, the aft hatch is a bit smaller than a hatch frame, so it doesn't stay in place that well. You can see that it doesn't lock in place exactly. I don't think it's a problem when you use it, but if you lose it, that's a problem. So maybe I will need to have a hiking strap around this when I sail. And I want to avoid this problem with the next hatch. It looks like it's going to fit better. So I guess the trick is to not move the frame in any way. Yeah, and the hatch opening needs to be widened a bit. I marked the inner perimeter of the frame. At least this excess needs to be removed. As this is a dusty work, I move outside. I use a round blade on the multi-tool, as that gives me great control. A smaller diameter would have been better for the sharp bend. I try to avoid cutting too far in by reducing the blade diameter hitting the wood. I do this by lifting the saw and only work with one end of the blade. Maybe a small rasp blade works better with the bend. Yes, it's easier to control the depth of the material removal, but it is a slow tool for this amount of material. I need to face the frame to fit well with the hull slope. I use a rasp blade to take down the edge a millimeter, until I think that it will work well with the amount of glue I will apply. Also, the front opening will need to be enlarged. Here I use the very tip of the blade to avoid cutting too far out. I finish with the rasp blade to get a smooth surface, and the hatch frame fits perfect. Having widening the hatch opening to fit the frame, I mark the outer perimeter. I do this to know where the gluing surface should end, so that I can make the gluing surface dull. In order to get good attachment, the surface should have some tracks. Here I use a 40 grit paper to get a rough surface. As I have cut off the epoxy layer on some parts of the hatch opening, I need to seal the bare wood surface with epoxy. I have some Sikaflex 591 that expire, so I can as well use this to glue the hatches. Sikaflex is a recommended glue for these plastic hatch frames. It's black as the hatches. It would have been better with white as the hull. But let's see how this turns out. I put a thin continuous string of glue around the opening. This is to make a watertight seal regardless if the glue covers the whole surface or not. As the glue is black, I do not want it to flow outside the hatch frame. That wouldn't be aesthetically appealing. I also put a continuous string around the frame. This is to make the seal 100% watertight. Now I press down the hatch frame onto the opening. The irritating thing with this glue is that it's so sticky. Cleaning up the mess requires a lot of paper. I finish with clamping the hatch in place. Change the smeared gloves and continue with the aft hatch. A thin string of Sikaflex on the hull and another string on the hatch frame, until I have good coverage of the gluing surface. I place the hatch in one end first, so that I don't miss the opening and smear glue outside the gluing area. Also here I finish with clamping down the hatch. As I'm not happy with having black Sikaflex as a seal all the way out, I get a smaller tube of white Sikaflex 591 and use this to lay a fillet around the outer perimeter of the hatch. It's not necessary for water sealing, but it will prevent dirt from getting stuck in under the frame edge. With the sealant finishing tool, the aesthetics also improves. Of course, paper is also necessary to clear off the excess messy sticky glue. I finish happily with putting the lid on this part of the project. Next time I open up for something different. Please join me then.